At this time, I call to order the public hearing of the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board for June 25th, 2019. The first item on the public hearing agenda is a hearing concerning the adoption of the proposed budget of the Gateway Early College High School for fiscal year 2019-20. This hearing is required under state law. The purpose of the hearing is to give any resident or taxpayer the opportunity to protest the conclusion of any item in the proposed budget. At this time, I will afford any resident or taxpayer the opportunity to address the governing board concerning the proposed action under consideration. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Are there any comments from members of the board? That now concludes the public hearing for the adoption of the proposed budget of the Gateway Early College High School for fiscal year 2019-20. The second item on this agenda is item number 2, a public hearing concerning the adoption of the proposed budget of the Phoenix College Preparatory Academy for fiscal year 2019-20. This hearing is required under state law. The purpose of the hearing is to give any resident or taxpayer the opportunity to protest the conclusion of any item in the proposed budget. At this time, I'll afford any resident or taxpayer the opportunity to address the governing board concerning the proposed action under consideration. Would anyone like to address the board? Are there any comments from members of the board? Hearing none, that now concludes the public hearing for the adoption of the proposed budget of the Phoenix College Preparatory Academy for fiscal year 2019-20. Final adoption of these two budgets will take place during the business portion of the regular board meeting. That concludes the public hearing. At this time, I call to order the regular meeting of the Maricopa County Community College Governing Board for June 25th, 2019. Mrs. Wynn, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one substitution this evening, Colleen O'Neill for President Chris Haynes. We have no student life report, no faculty executive council report. Presenting for the Adjunct Faculty Association is Patrick Roddy.
Good evening. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests. My name is Patrick Roddy, president of the Adjunct Faculty Association of Maricopa Community Colleges, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Scottsdale Community College, where I teach in the School of Film and Theater. This last month, the AFA held our board member elections, and we are excited to have a new group of adjunct faculty eager to serve the AFA as they perform their critical role in facilitating student success, as well as being engaged and positive partners in improving the district's organizational effectiveness. Starting next month, we will have new college representatives at Phoenix College, Mesa Community College, Glendale Community College, Gateway Community College, and Estuary Mountain Community College. It is our goal that the administration at each of these campuses will have an opportunity to meet with their new AFA representatives. As we welcome a new group of adjunct faculty to serve on the AFA board, I would also like to recognize the service of our departing AFA representatives, Ted Hibbler from Glendale Community College, Ella Anasenko from Phoenix College, Ann Rochelle from Mesa Community College, and Roxanne Beckstrom-Sternberg from Gateway Community College. In addition, Gail Haas's term on the AFA board as past president and member of the executive committee has also come to an end. But I'm happy to report that Gail will continue to serve the AFA by being a member of our advisory committee for this coming year. Thank you, Gail. In closing, I'd like to wish everyone a restful summer holiday and a happy Independence Day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I also want to let everybody know that Dr. Tom Narini is on the phone with us from Egypt. Dr. Narini, what time is it there?
It's 3:35 on Wednesday morning.
Well, I think you get the award for putting forth the most effort to attend a governing board meeting.
Thank you.
So I don't know whether you're going to bed very late or you have gotten up very early, but thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure.
Very good. We're now at the Chancellors Report. Dr. Harper-Marinick.
Thank you, Dr. Thor, members of the board. We have two presentations, and before I do that, I would like to acknowledge that this is the last meeting for Dr. Ernie Lara, who is the president at Estrella Mountain Community College. Dr. Lara has served Maricopa for 37 years. And yes, 12 of those as the great leader of Estrella Mountain. He also worked as a faculty member, student services program director, division chair, and dean of student services. Served 3 of the colleges, Glendale, Paradise Valley, and actually started at Estrella Mountain when Estrella Mountain was not even a college yet. It was a center. So we want to thank Dr. Lara for 37 years of great service and leadership and his commitment to students and student success. We wish you the best moving forward. Thank you for all you have done. And the first presentation is an update on our Open Educational Resources, OER, initiative. And we have faculty member Matthew Bloom, who is English faculty member at Scottsdale Community College, who has been providing the leadership for the OER initiative. And I would ask now if Matthew could come to the podium and make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests. My name, as Dr. Harper-Marinick just said, is Matthew Bloom. I'm English faculty at Scottsdale Community College, and I am presently on assignment as the Faculty and Residence Open Educational Resources Coordinator for the district. And with me,
my name is Angela Cristiano. I'm math faculty at Paradise Valley Community College, and together we co-chair the Maricopa Million Steering Team.
So the Maricopa Million Steering Team, if you're not aware, is comprised of faculty, staff, and administrators from various colleges across the district. I'm very proud to say that we presently have representation from every college on the team, which is really exciting. And so we're going to talk a little bit here, and I will just preface the whole thing by saying, just jokingly today, I was talking with someone from the MCLI, and they said, how much time are they going to give you? Because they know that I can talk about OER for 17 hours if you let me, so I won't do that. What we want to do is just take a few minutes just to give an overview of how the Maricopa Millions OER project is supporting student success in ways that are very human, I think, and very reasonable, but also in ways that align with the district's 2017-2020 strategic commitments, specifically ensuring that students have a world-class learning experience, that faculty are well-trained, and customizing training for the workforce. So just to begin, I'm not a big graph person, so I didn't make this, but these are statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this graph and the next one demonstrate just how out of pace and how enormous the rise in the cost of educational materials. This is not tuition. This is specifically college textbooks and other kinds of learning materials that students need in order to pass their classes, and aren't necessarily always immediately factored into their budgets, right? So you can see here, this second one here shows that educational books like college textbooks since early 1980s the prices have risen 812%. And if you think about something that is outpacing the cost of medical expenses, for example, that's pretty incredible. So I feel like showing these numbers right here pretty clearly demonstrates that there is a problem. And if we think about who our students are, there is a very real side to that thing. And so to address that problem, in 2013, the Maricopa Millions steering team, or the Maricopa Millions OER project, was founded by Dr. Harper Marinig. And the goal was to try to provide support for faculty across the district who were choosing to use what are called open educational resources to save their students money and provide their students with day one access to learning materials. And that was the beginning of the Maricopa Millions OER project. And one way that we've been doing this is through student awareness campaigns.
So since 2017 to what we're doing right now, this is an example of our student awareness campaigns. These are table tents that can be found throughout our colleges in the district. And what these do, they point our students to our district website that instruct them how to search our Find a Class online for courses that provide no cost and low cost course materials. So low cost is defined as under $40 for all of the course materials. In addition to the table tents, we have events on the campuses each semester where the students can talk to us about what the low cost, no cost filter does for them and what we have offered through our schools. Some of them do our whiteboard campaign, and they let us know how much they spent on their course materials and what they might have done with that money instead. This one, we had a potential for this student. He said he would continue to take classes or possibly take more classes in one semester, which leads to a faster completion rate for these students.
And there's actually some scholarly evidence that open educational resources, specifically degree pathways that are supported by open educational resources or zero textbook cost pathways, students on average, this was a study out of Tidewater College in Virginia, students on average take more credits when they're in those kinds of zero textbook cost degrees. So at a given time, they're taking more credits ostensibly because they can afford it, and as a result of that, that translates hypothetically to faster completion, which is obviously a great thing. And also, like you said, the potential to boost enrollment or to support students and make it possible for them to move through their educational experience more quickly. There's also just the human side of it, and these images speak for themselves. We've got a whole bunch of them, and of course we picked the best ones, but none of them none of them do not demonstrate like how this is a real issue for students, especially when we consider, for example, and the student is just, he maybe wants to be a video editor, right? And so he needs that software. That's not cheap software to purchase. And so these can be very helpful.
Another thing that this addresses and gives us a chance to talk to our students that may be housing and food insecure, which is a big issue across Maricopa students. And so seeing stuff like this, that they can find classes for no cost or low cost and then not have as many concerns for food and housing as well.
So this is where I have to be very careful because I have the tendency to go off on the nerdy kind of intellectual property and copyright side of what we're talking about here. But just to give you a sense of what an open educational resource is, it is a piece of intellectual property that is available either in the public domain or under an explicit open sharing license, which permit others to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute the material. So we're not just talking about faculty. It is nice when faculty use free resources that may be online, but an open educational resource is actually explicitly allowing the faculty to customize the material, to adapt the material for their specific course that they're teaching or the specific student that they may have in mind. The ability to retain the content is very important because you're not relying on links that happen to die at that moment when you need it in your online course. So there's a lot of reasons why the licensing aspect of it is important, and I do encourage you to send me an email, and I'm happy to set up a time to explain it in greater detail if you want. You can also just Google it. There's plenty of information there. But it's through the use of these resources that we have been able to demonstrate a real impact on the students.
So the original goal of the Maricopa Millions Project, which was founded in 2013, was to save students $5 million in 5 years. So we have surpassed that goal. It's been beyond the 5 years. We are upwards of $15 million now. And this is through the faculty decisions to use no-cost or low-cost materials in their classes, such as OER.
And we've also seen, as the years go by, we've seen this number increase from semester to semester, and that is in large part because faculty are becoming more aware of it, but also it's just reporting the things that they're already doing. Many faculty members just have instinctively chosen to use low-cost materials the entire time, and now they understand that they can actually code their classes in a certain way so that it's searchable in the system. And when we're able to collect that data, we can see that this is having an increasing impact.
So Maricopa Millions has funded 26 full courses to be developed by our faculty here, adjunct and residential have participated, and they are publicly available through Canvas Commons for others outside of Maricopa to access as well.
And in order to support the faculty development of this stuff, we have an ongoing faculty professional development series where faculty are able to learn about open educational resources from a variety of perspectives. Last fall, as an example of this, we launched a workshop series called Exploring the World of Open Education. This here is just the outside of the passport that we designed, which allow faculty who attend each one of the 7 workshops to get a little stamp inside their passport. I see somebody in the audience right now that went to a couple of them. So it's kind of a fun way of promoting the professional development, but it is an example of what we're doing to try to increase faculty awareness and encourage adoption of open educational resources. And this is happening, the impact that Maricopa is having with open educational resources goes beyond, the students are the most important, and how it hits home is very important, but we've had an impact beyond our district since 2013 because of what Maricopa Millions has done. And I personally can't really take very much credit for this because I inherited a lot of the success of Maricopa Millions. I mean, I'm like helping to run it now and maintain it, but it was really the people who initially started it who were able to create this, what is now a globally recognized initiative. And the initiative is just this last semester in February, we hosted the first statewide Arizona OER conference, and that was at Phoenix College. And we had representatives from institutions from all across the state. We also had some people from California. We also had people from as far as Oklahoma State University come in. And so we're going to be doing it again next February. We're really looking forward to continuing that leadership. And then recently, the Maricopa Millions Project was involved in getting Maricopa a sub-award on a $2.5 million Department of Education Open Textbooks grant. We are currently in the beginning stages of rolling out this grant, working on a project to design some specific career and technical education pathways supported by open educational resources. Which ones we choose to develop has a lot to do with the results of an initial landscape or pathways analysis that's happening right now. We are in the coalition that we're part of here. The consortium is between Arizona State University and then 2 of the other largest community college systems in the country. So we anticipate that this will have an enormous impact on our students moving forward. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. McGrath?
Thank you. I'm so pleased to hear this. Question, where is this Ivy located?
Ivy Tech is in Indiana.
Thank you. It's good to know that it's spreading across the nation. I do have a complaint. We have a professor at Chandler Gilbert who uses his own mathematics textbook to teach his class. It costs $300. I'm hoping something can be done more in mathematics because I hear complaints about this particular course all the time. Apparently it's not a necessary class, but if you're a math major, it might be. So I'm so pleased with what you're doing. This is just unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would love to know the specific class because we have these grants. We're constantly looking for opportunities to try to displace costly textbooks and maybe spread that awareness even further.
I want to thank and congratulate both of you and all the other faculty members that are working on OER. because we know that having access to the educational materials from day one is really critical to student success. A couple questions. You mentioned Tidewater Community College, and if my memory serves me correctly, they have, I think they call them Z degrees, where all of the courses involved in a degree can be taken with courses that use OER. To your knowledge, do any of the Maricopa colleges have a Maricopa version of Z degrees?
Yeah, so right now, I know Mesa Community College has developed a Z degree. Just to be clear, there are a number of different kind of permutations of these kinds of degrees across the country. They're called different things, and they are different things. Some of them are strictly OER degrees, which means that students go through the entire trajectory of their 2-year education without using anything really but OER, or primarily OER. Z degree more indicates that it's at least free for them, so it might not be openly licensed in that way, but nonetheless, it's something that a lot of colleges have. It's a lot easier to do because you can leverage library resources and free resources online in ways that you can't strictly with OER. But yeah, I know that Mesa is close. Scottsdale Community College has been working on something like that for the time, and this coalition for open active pathways ultimately, hopefully, will lead to something that we can scale across the district focused on certain CTE programs. But we will see, like I said, where that goes because of that. We've found our experience is a little bit different. Trying to scale a Z degree across something as large as Maricopa is a little bit more challenging than some of the smaller colleges that have managed to do it. But that's something that we look forward to.
That leads to my second question. I know that curating an OER class can be really overwhelming to a faculty member, given all of the choices that are available to them. Have any of the instructional councils taken on as a task to join forces to identify the various OER materials for their most popular courses?
I'm not sure if that's happening at the instructional level. I'm in the math division, and I know that we do communicate college to college. I think it's more of a college division decision between the faculty right now, but I'm not at the instructional council meetings to tell you if they've discussed it.
One of the components in the Maricopa strategic plan right now is to kind of embed the OER mission in the institutional structures that exist. And so one of those things is kind of getting into the instructional councils, and we may have practitioners on some of them. However, there is not like a formalized way of doing that yet, but that's something that we definitely want to look into.
Chancellor?
And I do know that some of the grants that you mentioned earlier, I think we've had 26 courses developed, that some of that work was teams within a discipline for multiple colleges. So it may not be the entire instructional council, but it was certainly a multi-college effort. And I just want to say thank you to the two of you and all of your colleagues, because this initiative has been faculty-led from the beginning. And it's because of your efforts and your commitment to bring other people along that we can today celebrate what we have done. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Chancellor?
Thank you, Dr. Thor, members of the board. The second presentation is an update, and for some of the board members may be new information about the work that we do in the Chair Academy. And we have the CEO of the Chair Academy, Rosemary Sloan, here, and I would ask her to please come to the podium for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper Marinick, members of the CEC, and guests. My name is Rosemary Sloan. My official title is Vice President of MCC with a working title of Executive Director, CEO of the Chair Academy. I too could spend 17, 18 hours talking about the work that the Chair Academy does, but I won't do that tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. So I would like to share with you some things about the Chair Academy, who we are, what we do, and the benefit we provide to our college system. The Chair Academy is a self-funded, self-sufficient department of Mesa Community College. And as an international organization for almost 30 years, our mission is to design and promote world-class training programs and services that advance academic and administrative leadership across all post-secondary institutions. The Chair Academy has just been revealed in research that I have recently read as one of the longest records of leadership development training across higher education, and it is recognized as one of the few, if not only, established organizations developing leaders across more than 500 colleges globally. We are unique and an asset of this college system, proud of the global recognition that we bring to the district, as well as meaningful and impactful global partnerships and relationships that we've established and maintained. We've celebrated 28 international leadership conferences. We're excited to bring our 29th here to Scottsdale in 2020. We've conducted over 300 leadership academies worldwide. You can see from the screen all the different places that we've been. We have representation from all 50 states, from our foundation in both our foundation and advanced academies. We're partnering currently with Rural Roads University in Northern Arizona University for those interested in graduate credits who complete our program, 6 graduate credits toward a master's degree in higher education administration and leadership, or a certificate in higher education leadership. We also have a licensing agreement with Victoria University in Melbourne, Australia, and you can see from the screen our other partners as well. Our newest publication is our blog, What About Leadership, where we have our YouTube channel that's focused on content. We have book reviews. We also have leadership articles, quotes, and tips and tools for leaders across all levels of higher education. 35% of our conference attendees and participants from our academies are international, and that number is continuing to grow. We think it's one of the greatest assets that we do bring to the district. Our mission is in alignment with our academy goal, and it is to provide relevant, learner-centered training for organizational leaders. It's engaging, meaningful, useful, practical. It is around positive change for professional growth. In one of my first meetings with Dr. Haney about a year ago, we chatted about my commitment to the work that I do with the academy. As a former teacher of almost 20 years in both elementary and college level education, I shared with him my passion for student success and my belief that you don't need a title to be a leader. You can lead from any position, in any seat, in any organization. Our academy content modules engage leadership practices from this position, a position of influence, not control, as an intentional choice that begins with each one of us. Many of the participants that we work with say this: I don't think I'm a leader. I don't think I belong in this program. I'm not sure if I belong as a leader in my organization. When they leave our academy programs, we hear this: this has been a, quote, life-changing, career-changing experience, impacting thought, action, behavior, communication, decision-making, change initiatives, relationship building, as well as their continued practice toward transformational leadership. We have 2 academy programs that focus on leader development, our Foundation Leadership Academy and our Advanced Academy. The Foundation program and the Advanced program are year-long programs. Our Foundation Academy is for the emerging leader. It's designed around knowing yourself and knowing the world in which you lead. The Advanced program does the same thing, but it's for our more established leaders. Both of our programs span the course of a year. The Foundation has 5 days of residential training followed by a year-long practicum. that incorporates mentoring, coaching, and an individual professional development plan that's created by the participants. At the end of that practicum, they come back for 5 more days of intense residential training. The advanced program follows the exact same format, except it's 3 days of intense residential training, followed by a practicum, coaching, mentoring, a personal and professional investment plan, and then 3 more days of coaching. You can see from the screen here the different focus and results and outcomes from each one of our programs. I think the most important part of this, it's designed around the theoretical research of transformational leadership. What I should mention to you as well is that from our evaluations, 98% of those who have graduated from our program would recommend it to a colleague. 65% have experienced upward mobility as a graduate from our program, and 10% of our graduates are now in an executive level position currently as either a president, a vice chancellor, or a chancellor. And I think that's something to be really proud of. I'm also wanting to inform you that our Arizona Leadership Academy has been hosted by South Mountain Community College. Thank you, Dr. Olson. We currently have 22 participants from our college system registered in this program and currently in the practicum process. 7 of our community colleges are represented, as well as the district office. We have a new program that is starting in February, and so our invitation to the board, if you would like to attend one of our sessions, we'd be more than happy to share with you our entire content and let you experience that. One of the things that you also see here is our Academy membership. We started this about 1.5 years ago. It's very affordable. You never have to renew it, and there's some definite discounts involved there. Membership to the Academy also provides global partnerships, and I'd like to share with you the benefit we feel we bring to the college system in terms of global partnerships. We have long-term contracts with statewide community college systems that conduct foundation and advanced academies in Minnesota, Massachusetts, Maryland, Ohio, the Association of Florida Colleges, the Wisconsin Technical College System, which has been a partner with us since 1995, across all of our Canadian provinces, including Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, Newfoundland, and Labrador. In the past 2 years, we've established partnerships and secured contracts with the following statewide organizations: New Jersey, Illinois, Pima Community College Systems, Suffolk, Henry Ford College, West Hills Kalinga Colleges, Victoria University and Victoria Polytechnic in Melbourne, Australia, who we currently have a licensing agreement with. And now I'm currently, in my free time, I have current conversations going on with Colorado, Texas, and the California College Systems, the Washington Centers of Excellence, Bermuda College, and I'm always looking for more international colleges to join. Membership is something that we are encouraging. We have over 300 members now, just starting 1.5 years ago. And I'd like to invite the board to experience our International Leadership Conference, our 29th conference at the Scottsdale Plaza Resort, May 18th through the 20th. And you're going to see a familiar face up there. Dr. Harper Marinick will be providing the welcome address to our international conference attendees, as well as our keynote speaker in collaboration with Dr. Chang. We will be reviewing and discussing issues around driving innovation, empowering equity, fostering student success, and inspiring trust. And at this time, I'd like to thank the Chancellor for the opportunity to share more with you about our Academy programs. As I said, I did that very, very quickly. I could talk for days. I'd also like to thank you, President Thor, and the members of the board for your time and attention, the wonderful support that I received from all of the college presidents. I'm taking an opportunity to try and meet individually with all of you to continue to share the process and the programs that we have available, as well as an invitation to the board at any time to share what we do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from board members? Mr. Saar.
I just want to verify that the attendance in this is 15,000.
We have had over the past 28, almost 30 years, we've had 15,000 plus participants in our international leadership conferences, and conferences are held, as I said, once a year in different locations. We're hoping in 2021 to take our international leadership conference international and go to Vancouver. So that is there. In terms of the Academy participation, we have 12,000 plus Academy graduates.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else, Dr. Harper-Marinick?
No, thank you, Dr. Thor.
We're now at Citizens Interim. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board about items that are not on the agenda for discussion today. In compliance with the open meeting law, the governing board will neither discuss nor take action on issues raised during this portion of the agenda. Each speaker is asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We have 4 speakers this evening. The first one is Jim Hill, representing the Maricopa Community College's Police Officers Association.
Good evening, President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, CEC, and guests. My name is Jim Hill. I'm the president of the Maricopa Community College's Police Officers Association. And today I'm here to talk to you about the ongoing discussion about employee groups. And what I want to ask you is, when you look at employee groups, that you take a hard look at putting the college police employees in a separate group. The reason for this is we have a lot of different laws and rules that apply to us. Title 38 in the Arizona Revised Statute on how investigations and the rights and responsibilities of police officers are codified. We have confidentiality beyond normal employees. We have access to criminal intelligence databases that we cannot share with anybody. We are involved with the Arizona Criminal Justice Information System, the National Crime Information Center, and Arizona Post. Along with that, we are truly a district function, not a function of individual campuses. Tomorrow, the chief could call and tell me I report to Estrella Mountain instead of MCC. But that's in our business, we call those good other department transfers or God transfers. We're used to those. I guess the best way to look at it, I always use a sports analogy. If the district is the league and the campuses are the teams, we're the referees. We report to the league. It wouldn't be right for us to be involved in the internal politics of each individual campus if we're the ones that have to be the arbitrator later when disputes arise. This leads to the need to remain separate to keep maintaining and protect our partiality when it comes to investigations. And I don't say that lightly or hyperbole. Earlier there was a employee meeting when all this started, and I walked into the employee group meeting, people were talking, and I heard, "Oh good, the police are here. It would be great to have our brothers and sisters in blue on our side." I screeched my brakes and said, that's not what we're about. We don't take sides. We're here to enforce and be impartial. So when you take a look at this, we really need to be in a separate, and I'm talking about all employees, because our dispatchers also have access to the same intelligence we do. So really consider keeping us in a separate group just to maintain and help us protect our standards and our impartiality. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephen Peist.
Good evening, President Thor, board members, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, CEC members, and distinguished faculty and guests. I rise to speak to you tonight. My name is Steve Peist. I work at Estrella Mountain Community College as reading faculty and the division chair of the Division of Modern Languages. Yesterday at 5:15 p.m., I received an email telling me that I was incorrectly credited for underpaying ASRS retirement, and that I owed $562 and some change, and it would be taken out of my next check. My wife and I are meticulous financial planners. The toughest part of that email was telling my wife that $562 that we hadn't planned on would probably not be coming to the house. Luckily, later that night I was told you can disregard that email. And this afternoon, after 3 o'clock, I was told that $8.98 would be taken out of my check. And I do appreciate the staff getting on that and making that correction. But this seems to be happening a little bit too often. I understand that mistakes get made. And I have to tell you, with the amount of planning I have to do, my daughter and my money attend ASU. and I'm not sure in which order. So this type of expense is not something that I can, go without any notice whatsoever. So I'm hoping, and our adjuncts are actually, we have several adjuncts in my division who've had pay issues that are still unresolved dating back to February of 2018. At one point, we even had an adjunct in my division who received a check for $0.00 twice and had to go to a food pantry. That can never happen again. And I'm going to do my best, and that's why I'm going to advocate for the adjuncts as well, because I feel like we need to do this. And I know we can do a better job. I know that everyone works hard and everyone's trying to do the right thing and the best job that they can. But at this point, there needs to be a way to fix this system to make sure that this does not repeat. Because I have to tell you, I almost grabbed for the mailbox last night when I saw that number. And I know a lot of my fellow faculty members, 1,400 of them apparently, were also had that same level of anxiety. I used to work in the New York City public schools, over 1 million school children and 350,000 employees. And in the 17 years I worked there, my paycheck was incorrect once. Within 24 hours, a handwritten check was delivered to my school with a handwritten note of apology from the Deputy Chancellor. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Doody.
Thank you, President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Harper-Marinick, members of the CEC, guests, and my colleagues. My name is Pam Doody, and I just finished my second year as a full-time residential faculty at Phoenix College. I, too, have been impacted by the payroll debacle again. After spending every other week in the PCHR office with my friend Barb Klein to correct, amend, have hand-delivered paychecks in the off-cycle, and then having to address payroll issues while I was spreading my mom's ashes, last summer was only the beginning of my nightmare. Then I got caught in the vortex of the district HR not speaking with our local HR, and my having to pay back money which had been paid to me doubly correct, that which had already been corrected. To complicate this particular portion of my nightmare, I had to sign a promissory note, which I had a caveat included regarding my agreeing not to take legal action, which I marked through the day before I went in for bilateral knee replacement. As you may or may not know, this was to authorize my overpayment being repaid over my entire spring 2019 paychecks, because the left hand apparently did not know what the right hand had already compassionately completed. Now, I am again in the payroll nightmare where my ASRS, my long-term disability deductions, as well as my sick leave accrual are not correct. Thankfully, because I recognized the amount was quite skewed, though I initially could not determine where the error was in my check, I at least did know that there was an error. If nothing else, the incompetence of the HCM system and the individuals running the system have taught me to be cautious when looking at any of the numbers on my paycheck. I understand state law ensures you as my employer are entitled to collect money from me when you have made an error in overpayment. I further recognize you will pay me correctly so long as I inform you when I have not been compensated accordingly. However, I'm beginning to wonder if through this continuing debacle, there has been any recognition or thought given to the duress and anxiety that I'm experiencing. In the last 24 hours, I've been told I must pay $685.47 to now this afternoon, that amount going down to $349.29 in my next check next week. How do I know that that amount is correct? I have very limited means of determining why any sense of confidence if I have been, am, or will be paid correctly. The pay stub is an interesting picture of an accounting nightmare, and just when you think you can figure it out, it changes. You hired me to teach English and focus on being a contributing member of service to our community. I love what I do, and I would like to focus on my teaching. I can't believe I again have to figure out how to repay money because of yet one more glitch, patch, fix that's failed. If we were in any other business, this would not be occurring, and if it was occurring, personnel would be held accountable. Can you imagine for just one moment if I conducted myself in the classroom with the same sensitivity which has been offered me when addressing my paycheck? You would not stand for this, and I don't feel that it's fair, professional, or acceptable that I continue to be treated in this manner. I hope by standing before you this evening, you will in the future insist, no, demand, that this system be corrected or replaced. And then, I hope you will, if it cannot be replaced, I hope then, in the very least, you will entertain legal action with a company who sold you and all the employees I work with down a hole of despair. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Keith Hefner.
Good evening, President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor Harper-Marinick, CEC, and guests. This is the same topic, and I'd like to just start off by saying I'm here speaking about a matter of public concern that has come to light recently, and that is the under-deduction of ASRS. It's a long history since last year. We are well aware of the payroll issues. This last issue with ASRS has been described pretty well by my colleagues. It was under-deducted for their summer paychecks. There's been a couple more issues since the summer, and that would be underpayment, the wrong load hour. That was corrected. And also, there's still an issue with accrual of summer sick leave pay. Individual emails were sent out to those affected about the ASRS starting yesterday. Faculty found out about these, or at least I was contacted by faculty about all of these issues. And this is only since, May. They were told, as you heard, that they had to pay back large sums of money and would be taken out of the next paycheck. And then that was followed by a retraction of that. Hey, no, we don't really know about that. We're going to try and figure out what the real calculations are. Waves of panic, tons of emails. I brought a couple of emails today just to share because these faculty couldn't be here tonight, and I'll just read through a few excerpts. And there's going to be 2, maybe 3 from yesterday, and then there's one from today. There were some corrections. It's still a broken system. Keith, I was just informed that I was paid $914 too much. It'll be taken out of my next paycheck all at once to reconcile 2019. I was not paid an extra $914 on the last paycheck, so I don't know how long this has been happening, but I need help. I lost my lease, bought a house, had my transmission blow out, and took my daughter on our vacation. And now in one paycheck, I'm out that money. It would be half my paycheck if I wasn't working summer school help. But the last time this happened, I had to pay back $700 3 days before Christmas. I'm a single mom. It's criminal. Hey, Keith, I understand your inbox is being flooded. However, I wanted to share this email with you. I don't understand the whole process of accounting and comparing my pay stubs and where they have gone right or wrong, so I'm not going to spend my time doing that. My efforts are where they should be, teaching. I was hired to teach, develop curriculum, and mentor my students. My hope is that the email is incorrect. I don't have to pay over $800 back in one paycheck. I'm frightened to have to do this, even a few paychecks. My hope, like others, is that this is resolved and their calculations are incorrect. From today, at this point, this is your mistake and your responsibility to fix. The amount of financial stress the district has caused me repeatedly because payroll cannot do their job is egregious, unprofessional, unethical, and clearly demonstrates that we need a third-party consultant to figure out this mess. We should never be messing with people's pay. And that's the one thing districts have done over and over and over. This is exactly how low morale and lack of faith and leadership are created. I have 3 seconds. I wonder if I could ask for 30 seconds.
You may.
Thank you, ma'am. So we've been told on numerous occasions that the payroll system has been fixed. After 18 months, that's clearly not the case as proven by this current crisis. People are hurting because of these ongoing issues. The district really needs to either put the right people on this internally, or if that is not an option, seek external solutions. We cannot abide another payroll debacle. We do appreciate the work done so far by HR. There have been improvements made to date. It's clearly not enough. We can't keep doing this to our employees. Please fix it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now at the consideration of the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are consent matters unless they are removed from the consent agenda at this time. Do any board members or the chancellor wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Did we hear from you, Dr. Narini?
Yeah, I hope so. Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved 7-0. We are now at item number 12, non-consent, modification of adopted fiscal year 2019-20 budget from 2% to 1% tax increase. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt number 12.1.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yep.
Mr. Sarr.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that this is on the agenda. We've passed the last month the 2% increase with no opposition. We no major opposition, but we also spent time with the major taxpayers in Maricopa County, explaining to them how we were going to use the new funding, not only from this but also from other elements of property tax. And their response was positive, that this was in the best interest of Maricopa County and the constituencies that they serve. And in our case, we're talking about 1% decrease in what we approved last month. That amounts to just shy of $5 million, which equates to about $5 a year for the average homeowner in Maricopa County. I don't see where this takes precedent over the way that we could invest that money in the problems that we have talked about for several years. One biggest one being the decline in, we're currently tracking about 6 or 7% decrease every year in our enrollment, and yet we are the fastest growing county in the nation. Those two don't come together. We got a problem. We've got a couple of programs that are really working well, but we've talked about the fact that there's just not enough funding to really put them into a scalable operation. In Maricopa County, we have 8.3% of the youth who are between the ages of 16 and 19 who are not enrolled in school and who are unemployed or not in the labor force. That's 8.3% of our youth in that age group are sitting there with nothing to do. No education, no job. And we know what some of those situations can lead to if we're not addressing them. More than 40% of our high school graduates last month are not enrolled in post-secondary program in the first fall after high school graduation. And that's a conservative number. And we're talking about Maricopa County and the state of Arizona, that 40% of those potentially students of ours are not coming into our program or any other post-secondary program. They're just looking for a job or looking for something, and hopefully they would be looking at us for the solutions to their future. But they're not, because we don't have the resources to put somebody in place to address their issues. For the $5 per household investment, Maricopa can embed half the high schools in Maricopa County with a highly trained academic advisor by next spring. We currently have 6 academic advisors embedded in 6 Mesa high schools. The responses to that first year, which was last year, we won't find the results of this past year until September, when those students decide to or not to attend post-secondary programs. But let me just read some of the statistics that Mesa has talked about as far as the success of that program. 31% increase in dual and concurrent enrollment. Keep in mind that Mesa has had one of the largest declines in enrollment in the last 4 or 5 years. This is remarkable. This is their number one among a couple other elements that they've implemented that has brought their decrease in enrollment up to almost break even. 24% increased Hispanic enrollment. This is just from this program that they've identified. 26% increased FTSE, which is full-time equivalent enrollment. 11% increase in first-generation students. A 5% increase in Pell Grant recipients. 20% increase in Mesa Public School graduates attending Mesa Community College after graduation. And 84% increase in the President's Honors Scholarship recipients. A lot of those can be directly related to having that individual in that high school to respond to the questions of those students. And by taking away the 1%, the $5 per household per year in Maricopa County, we're taking away the ability to increase those 6 high schools to over 50. And that's an ongoing income source that we can continue to have that program in place at 50 or more high schools in Maricopa County. If you scale these numbers over those 50 high schools and the students in those, we make a remarkable investment return for all the taxpayers of Maricopa County, and especially those individuals in that 16 to 18 to 20 year range where we fail better than the rest of the country. So I urge you not to vote for this, to continue the 2% that we voted on a month ago and use the money that we're talking about to really make a difference to the students here in Maricopa County. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions?
I have a couple questions.
Dr. Narini?
So help me understand. Is it being suggested that the surge of new construction going on in Maricopa County and that new construction is going to increase our tax base? So the increased tax base will in turn generate additional tax dollars, and because of those tax dollars, that smaller increase in the percentage of property tax is necessary?
Mr. Hibbs, do you have a comment?
President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Narini, there will be some larger increase than what we had earlier predicted based on the fact that there is increased new construction. I think the estimate that we had originally made was for a $4.7 million increase for each 1%. We now believe it'll be about 4.9% for each 1%.
So there's no real disagreement in the financial needs of the district. Just it's more about where the money's coming from. Is that right?
I'm not sure we understood your question, Dr. Narini.
The budget that was proposed last month that we based the increase on, there's no disagreement that those are the needs of the district, correct? We're not debating, or we're not disagreeing in the need in the budget.
Correct.
Okay. So are we suggesting that the additional tax revenue generated by the surge will offset the $4.7 million that we need to keep on track with the proposed budget?
Mr. Hibbs?
The answer to that is no.
How far off are we on that?
I think it might be helpful that the 2% was not intended, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hibbs, but the 2% was not intended to be expended in the 1920 fiscal year, but rather to roll to the bottom line to begin to build a cushion for future years when our fund balances will be declining and we're going to need additional funds to avoid cuts at that time. Is that
is
basically correct?
That is correct, President Thor. We can still fund all of the items that were approved by the board this next year. The issue is to sustain some of those investments going forward will not be able to be done without some additional revenue being brought in to the district.
Thank you. So with the new surge that we're looking at, it doesn't sound like it may meet our needs. What are our options going forward?
Mr. Hibbs, take it.
Wow. Mr. Narini, in terms of options, I'm not totally sure what you might mean by that. I think certainly the board each year as the budget is presented has the option to determine whether or not it wants to increase tuition, whether it wants to impose such thing as a technology fee, whether it wants to increase property taxes. So future boards' actions certainly could begin to address future needs if that was what the board decided to do.
Okay, and so this is the part that I really don't understand, that I need more help understanding. So if we reduce it to 1%, do we have an ability in the future to make up with that 1%? I mean, can we increase the taxes in future to make up for this 1%?
Mr. Narini, I don't know that I would say you can make it up, because the fact is that the balance this year will drop by at least $4.7 to $4.9 million over what it otherwise would be. You cannot make that up. But in the future, you can have the opportunity to look at revenues and expenditures and where investments are needed and determine whether or not there are other actions that the board might take to increase revenues.
I see. Thank you. So perhaps we could maybe get the state to pony up what they should be coming up with. So, thank you.
I have no comment on the state being responsible.
But just to clarify, that this board in the future or future boards can levy not only the 2% that they're allowed to each year, but can go back and recover percentages that were left on the table in previous years.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at. I appreciate that.
Okay. Mrs. Nguyen. No, you're just, okay. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Hendricks.
Just one comment. We've talked about ways to get additional revenue.
Is your mic on?
Yeah. I think it is. We've talked about ways to get additional revenue, and the novel idea of going to the state, that's probably a good direction to go. We could raise taxes in the future. We can raise tuition. There's also the other side of the budget. You could also spend less money. And in future budgets, we may look at that, and we may find that we don't need as much money. So there's two directions to handle the budget. You can get more money or you can spend less money. Generally, my personal budget, I focus on spending less much of the time, but I think that's something to consider a possibility in next year's budget.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes 5-2 with Mrs. Sullivan and Mr. Saar voting no. We are now at first read, information items and monitoring report. For first read are revisions to board policy 14.13 regarding the student board member. The revisions proposed have the new Maricopa Student Senate overseeing the selection process for the new student board member instead of the Student Public Policy Forum. Any comments or questions? Not, this will be back in August for action. Mr. Sorry.
Let me say that this is a good improvement over what we did. We've got somebody in place. She's sitting
And
in
this
the front
doesn't
row.
affect her.
She is here, and we appreciate that without question. But I do think that the process with what's been presented here in first read is a much more improved way of allowing all students not only to participate in the program, but to have the vote on who is the eventual member of this board. So I appreciate the work that's been done.
Thank you. Information item, employment and separations. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. 15.1 is the burn report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. We're moving to governing board reports. Mr. Saar?
None today.
Mrs. McGrath?
No comment, thank you.
Mrs. Nguyen?
I just wanted to take a moment to thank the people that participated in the mediation from the administration side and from the faculty. It was nice to see everyone come together and have resolution, and I'm looking forward to where we go from here as we start the next school year, starting in August. And I want to just thank everyone for their time, and especially Dr. Thor, because that took something, and I didn't want to not have a public recognition of the work that got done. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan?
I wanted to say I learned something new every day and appreciate very much the OER and Chair Academy reports. Thank you for the information, and I'm impressed with what you're doing with that. Wanted to offer that comment. I note it says current event summaries, but I'm going to go future events. And that is speaking to, because I sit in as chair of the budget committee, somewhere between July and August, we're going to begin the conversation and process in preparation for the future budgets. And our goal through that committee will be to be very transparent and to begin to look as deeply together as we can to see where opportunities lie for capturing revenue that may be in the current budget to move us and forward and stabilize us, and to ensure that we have multiple conversations before we do take a vote on a future budget, so we do not have to repeat the activities. So that comes under future event summaries, not current events. And with that, I hope everyone has a great July.
Thank you. Mr. Hendricks?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no report. Our next meeting is August 27th. So like Mrs. Sullivan, I hope that everybody has a relaxing and enjoyable July.
In August.
We'll see you back in August. At this time, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.